Before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick shout out to Mr. Benny Z from Australia, who left us an awesome 5-star review on iTunes. The heading was Invaluable Podcast for Any Trade Business. And the message was, I work in management in a multi-million-dollar trades business based in Melbourne, Australia. Matt's podcasts keep me constantly questioning and striving for excellence in my business and my trade. I would recommend his podcast to anyone, beginner to advanced, to worker to owner. They're always beneficial and insightful. Keep it up, mate. Well, Benny, thank you very much for taking the time to leave that review. Very much appreciated, and it does help our rankings. Folks, if you would like to leave us a review, you can head across to iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or YouTube or Facebook or Google Plus or a number of places, and you can leave us a review, which would be very helpful. We don't ask for a lot. If you could take 5 minutes to do that, that would be fantastic. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's dive right in. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Siteshed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you are joining us today for a very special episode. It's going to be the first of a 3-part series that I'm conducting with Mr. Al Levi. Al is the author of an amazing book called The Seven Power Contractor, and if you've been listening to the show for a while, you would no doubt be familiar with Al. He's been on a number of times, and I'm going to post links to all of those in the show notes for this episode. Now, this episode and this series has been brought about by questions and demand from primarily the Facebook group that we have. And if you're not part of that group, head across to Facebook and you can type in the search bar, The Site Shed, and you'll see both the page and the group pop up. You can join both, or if you want to join the group, go right ahead. You can request to join that, and the lovely Talia will let you in eventually. Anyway, the questions that have been posted in this group very often have been relating to staff. A lot of people are having problems finding staff, recruiting staff, and I suppose retaining, which is a big one. So I've asked Al to come on the show because he is an absolute expert. And in this series, we're talking about 3 things. First of all, we've titled the series The Ultimate Blueprint to Finding, Training, and Retaining A-Level Staff. And in the first episode, which is the episode today, we're talking about recruiting your A-Team. In the following episode, we're going to be talking about onboarding and training your A-Team. And in the final episode of the series, we're going to be talking about retaining your A-Team. So tune into this. It's going to be fantastic. This is the first episode. Al never disappoints. And he's also left you some really cool little value adds on the page here. So if you head across to thesiteshed.com and you can find this page, there's a cheat sheet that he's left behind, which basically puts a bit of a visual and practical application to what we're talking about today. So go ahead and get that. It'll cost you the grand total of nothing. And there's also, you can get hold of the first chapter of the 7 Power Contractor book, which is awesome. So make sure you get hold of that. It's all for free and it's all for your benefit. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's dive right in. The Siteshed podcast is made possible because of Tradie Web Guys, creators of beautiful websites designed specifically for tradies and contractors. If you're tired of dealing with web designers that have no idea about your industry, then head across to tradiewebguys.com.au and reach out. Like many companies from all over the place, you'll be very glad you did. If you're anything like me, you're going to relate to what I'm about to say. It's really hard as business owners to take time off and go away and do things that you really enjoy doing when you know that you're not really investing in your business. You have that mindset of, well, I shouldn't really be doing this. I should be spending this money on my business, developing my business. A couple of years ago, I took a guilt-ridden weekend away down to the snow with some friends. And while we were down there, we were thinking, how cool would it be if we could get away and do this more often, but do it in a way that was adding value to our businesses? Anyway, we returned back to Sydney and I couldn't shake this idea and I started brainstorming. And as a result, I put together a program which we've called Ski and Learn. We had the first one in 2016 over in Wanaka, New Zealand, where we took a bunch of Siteshed listeners across to Wanaka, and we skied during the day, and then we did some business workshop stuff in the afternoon. It was a fantastic initiative. The bunch of guys from all over Australia came to that, and it was a really cool way that we could justify, I suppose, for ourselves as a business expense, traveling to a great ski location, learning something that we can implement into our business and ski some of these really cool slopes. In 2018, we're going to be running the second Ski and Learn program. This time it's going to be in Hakuba, Japan. Now, I warn you guys, tickets are filling up really quick for this, and we can only take so many, obviously, due to hotel logistics and everything like that. So if you are interested in a ski trip, which is a business tax deduction, you can head across to the siteshed.com/events, or you can get to it from the homepage as well. Jump on the landing page there and secure your position. They are filling up quick. I reckon within 2 weeks, they'll be gone. So I hope to see you on the trip. And if you've got any questions, you can reach out to us through that page.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jones, and you are joining us today for the very first episode of a three-part series that I'm recording with my main man and most popular guest on the Site Shed podcast, Mr. Al Levi. Al, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As I always say, it's easy to fool them once, but when you get the ass back again, that's really good. So thank you, Matt. And thank you to you listeners. I'm happy to share.
You're definitely the most requested guest on the show, and that's probably a testament to the amount of times you've been on the show. So for the listeners that are new to the podcast and they have not yet heard Al, you're in for a bit of a treat. Al's a trade business guru. He's the author of a book called The Seven Power Contractor, and I will certainly be posting links for you guys to get hold of that in the show notes to this episode. Al has also got a cheat sheet, which is available to you guys. There'll be a link to that in the show notes as well. Make sure you head across there. Al, what's the cheat sheet about?
The cheat sheet is what I stress is, when I was in business as a contractor before I became a business guru contractor and, worked in my family generational business, I thought there were a million things to do, Matt. And what I finally realized late in my career is there really are 7 things to have to master.
Yep.
Planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, and financial. And that is really what the cheat sheet is about, those 7 power concepts that will help all of the listeners take control of their business.
So again, listeners out there that aren't familiar with Al, I'm going to post links to the previous podcast in the show notes to this episode. If you want to find out more about Al, you can do that in the A to B, which was episode 46. Whew, Jesus, can't believe that long ago.
Yeah.
Then we did a series called Powering Your Business with the 7 Power Contractor Approach, where we covered off on planning, operating, and staffing. We also did a series called Why Most Family Businesses Don't Work, and that actually was a really good. That series we did then was fantastic. We went through organizational charts, defining job roles, steering the ship, and in fact, as part of a big business series that I did a little bit later. Al, I actually reposted defining job roles because it was super relevant to one of the topics that I was talking about in that big business series. So that got double love, that one.
Good.
And then there was a question which you came on and answered for one of our listeners, which was when is the right time to expand? And you were joined by your dear friend Miss Ellen Raw. And that was an absolute laugh a minute, that episode. So
it was.
So we'll definitely, I'll post links to all that, guys, so you can go back and check it out at your own time. However, Al, today we're talking about the ultimate guide to finding, training, and retaining A-level staff. Now, the reason that I suppose I dropped this hint to you relative to this topic was in our community on Facebook and whatnot. A lot of the guys having questions around finding the right staff and keeping the right staff. And I don't know if that's a problem you guys are having in the United States as well. But I mean, I know I recorded a podcast with a fellow out of Canada last week, and he was saying that it's a pretty big problem in Canada as well. So having a good process around staff, I think, is going to be a real game changer and something that can separate you from your competitors at least. So
this one of the nice advantages, Matt, of being older is I have seen this cycle before of we have all the work in the world but not enough guys, and then there's no work and we don't need these guys, and then there's all this work in the world and we need guys. So I have turned this corner many times, but I do believe the trend is going to get harder and harder to get good people into your farm system, if you will. And in America, that's baseball talk for the minor leagues and developing your own people, but getting people on board and getting them from good to great. That's really what you're after here.
Yeah. To avoid confusion, we've broken this down, Al, into 3 separate topics, which all tie into each other. First of all, we're going to talk about recruiting your A-Team. In the second episode, we're going to talk about onboarding and training your A-Team. And then in the third and final episode, we're going to be talking about how to retain your A-Team. So I'm hoping that, for the listeners out there, what you're going to get out of this series is certainly going to be a bit of a blueprint and a bit of a mind map, and I'm hoping a paradigm shift for you guys. So on how to recruit, retain, and keep your staff happy and keep the right people in your group, and keep everything sort of like a good little ecosystem there within your business. Al, is there anything there you want to, I suppose, outline initially in regards to some of the problems that we're hoping to solve with this series?
I think the really good part of that, they are 3 separate modules, but don't confuse them as a disconnect, because great recruiting leads to great orienting, which ultimately leads to great retention of key staff.
Roger.
So they're not like all separate things. They're connected. So what we're going to be talking about in this series kind of daisy chains and links itself together.
Yeah, and that's an important point, guys. As always, we've constructed the topics for these series so that the following one leads into the previous. So make sure, obviously, this is the first episode, so you can't go wrong here. But if you're tuning into this at a later date, make sure you follow on with the episode that's due to follow, because that's the way we sort of structured it. And as Al said, they all sort of do tie together. All right, Al, let's jump in. So we're talking today about recruiting your A-Team. Now, I'm really interested to hear about your process around this. I know we had a gentleman on the show a little while back, and he was talking about a process that he's got for staff retention, which was basically like running advertisements. And it was really interesting approach. He was more or less marketing for the position.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I'll start where I always start, Matt, which is a story.
Yep.
I was not born enlightened as a contractor. I got hit over the head with a pipe wrench enough that eventually I said, "Ow, that hurt. Let's do something different."
Yeah.
And so we had a staff of 70 people and 25 techs, and the way it kind of worked was sometimes people would come in, give us 2 weeks notice they were leaving, and that was good. That's pretty standard here in the United States.
Yeah. Sometimes
they give us a week's notice, and sometimes they just leave the keys on the dashboard. And so, but all of us would then we would be desperate because there's a truck sitting out there and there's calls coming in, and that is a cash register that's not making money.
Yeah.
So naturally, then we would fire everything up and go out and recruit. And now we're desperate. And my brother Marty had a funny line because he was the inside guy. He called our hiring test the mirror test, MIRROR, because they don't bury it in my accent. But a mirror test, which meant if you could fog the mirror, you got hired. That was our approach, because we were so desperate. Reactive. Uh-huh. Yeah, we were reactive versus being proactive. So first and foremost for everybody, and hopefully you laugh, but also recognize a pain point here, is until you become a proactive marketer, which is what recruiting is. So your marketing campaigns, and typically at your business, you got to market to get more people calling you than you can possibly handle, so that you can be picky about the prices you charge and where you go. Well, for some reason, we don't use the brilliance of that when it comes to recruiting staff, because really what recruiting is another word for marketing. And the better the job that you do at marketing and going after the people that you need to get to come to your company. Because what I learned also late, Matt, is every good employee always figured out how to make money. And every bad employee I put up with. So the difference between A and B employees, good employees, and C and D players who always found a way for me to lose money. That's what you have to be committed to. Yep. And so going after that, now there's a lot of things we'll dig in a little more about this, but think of recruiting as marketing. And if it's marketing, it automatically requires part of your very crazy busy day, week, and month has to be dedicated, as we finally said, we are always recruiting, we are always hiring, we are always orienting, we are always training, and the last piece of this is always retaining. And we will talk more about that as we go forward. but it starts with a proactive, never ending, always recruiting ahead of when you need.
Yeah. Okay.
You cannot wait till when you need them. That's the number one mistake.
Okay. So then, I mean, I know we've had this question on the show before. When is the right time to sort of grow your team and expand? And the general consensus back with that podcast was, well, you should really make sure you've got the work in place before you start hiring the right people. Is that kind of a contradiction to what you're saying now?
Here's what I'm saying about always recruiting. If you have 5 or 6 guys or 10 guys or 20 guys, here's what I guarantee you. There are 2 knuckleheads on your team that you are dying to get rid of. See as a New Yorker, I use the nice word.
Yeah.
Knucklehead. Yeah. So there are 2 guys you are dying to get rid of, but you don't have the guts. You won't pull the trigger. You won't enforce your standards, whatever standards you have, because you need these warm bodies. But if you were always recruiting, you mean to tell me if 2 great candidates walked in, you wouldn't find a place for them to work at your company?
Right.
Because I'm betting you did. Now, you do have to rely on your ability to make the phone ring off the hook. And it's always going to be a chase game between what I always call more calls and more texts.
Yeah,
more calls doesn't just mean more phone calls. It means the right amount of calls from the right customers at the right time. And more text means not just warm bodies, but people who know how to talk to customers, make good recommendations, which leads to good sales, good operational behavior, and good technical behavior. Because most of our conversation today, I'm assuming, is about text. But everything I'm saying is you need great people on the inside of your business. If the CSRs, the customer service reps, can't answer the call, you're going to look at your marketing and go, oh, this stuff doesn't work. Well, your team is blowing the call before we ever get the tech in the field.
Right.
They're interrelated.
I would say probably most of the topics we're going to be talking about in this series are not really relevant to the actual tech. It's more about, the recruiting staff and the processes that are finding the right people. I mean, finding the right people is probably like the last piece of the puzzle, right?
It is. And for me, ultimately, it became really one of the first pieces in the puzzle.
Right.
Because I always had more calls than I can humanly do in a day.
Yeah.
And so for me, the hardest part was, now this is the thing. So I want the listeners to image a pie, whatever size pie you like. There are only so many ways you can cut that pie up. And that is the labor pool for experienced only talent that you are all competing for. And so unless you learn how to make more pies or make bigger pies, you're kind of stuck. So how would you handle this? And this analogy is that if you're all going for only experienced top-rate guys, you're going to have to overpay to get this person to come to your shop. And if you had to overpay to get them, then as soon as somebody else offers them $1 more, they're gone. So we refer to them as dollar hoppers. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't hire them, but your goal is to find young, willing people and have the systems and tools in place to take young, willing people and provide the skills. Because if you can, then you have a much bigger set of pies. You have a bakery that you can start cranking out great people at every one of the positions at your company.
There's 2 things that I want to ask you in relation to that. And it's all kind of, I suppose, from a recruiting point of view, before we jump too far ahead into the actual hiring process, what are some of the frameworks or the questions that you are asking in this recruiting marketing exercise to make sure that you're attracting the correct people for the position?
Well, that is a great question, because years ago, we used to write an ad all about what we want and not one word about what they wanted.
Uh-huh.
Imagine writing your marketing campaign to your people you want to use your services, which is telling the people out there about what they must do so that they can use you.
Right.
Well, we make that mistake when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah.
It's, the best person that you're looking for is that it's already employed and is good to leave that company and come work for you. So what is it that you're offering? And most times people do not read their ads from not their chair, but from the chair where the potential person that you're looking to hire reads it. So one of the first things I like to think about is, are you offering a career or are you offering a job?
Yep.
So if I arrive at your company, Matt, Is this where I'm going to live and die? There's no advancement. There's no move forward. There's no more money coming, no more responsibilities. So, you're really just offering me a job. But if the Al Levy company is offering a career path and I make good on that career path, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you every time in the job marketplace. And then your ads need to reflect that.
Can you give me give us an example, Al, of maybe the difference between offering a job and a career path?
So if you offer a job as I arrive as a technician and I'm well trained, or if I arrive as a bookkeeper and I'm well trained, or accounts receivable or accounts payable, or I can answer the phone, and that's all I can do. But if you have an organizational chart that is built like an apprentice who becomes a junior tech, who becomes a senior tech, who becomes a field supervisor, who can run a crew, who can rise up to service manager. And if they have the space, they can jump over to the big ticket salespeople and can sell the big jobs, a bathroom remodel or kitchen remodel and the rest of it. There's room to grow. And in my company and a lot of the companies I've worked with, if you have enough systems, you can what we call hub and spoke, which means there's other shops other than your main shop, which allows you to serve a lot of other areas and minimize drive time. Yeah. I'm just going to take a wild guess here and bet that there are times on the road and where you are in Sydney that you are just sitting still. Does that sound right?
It's an absolute shit fight.
And I've not been there yet, but I know that for a fact. So you have what we call in America windshield time, and you are losing money. So imagine if you could work two ends to the middle with a hub and spoke approach that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it having the ability to send somebody who's a field supervisor that's been trained on your systems to go there and open up another branch, and you don't have to duplicate all of what it is at the main branch. But then there's a whole lot less of this windshield time or the billable hours that you are losing, as if you opened up the drain on a bathtub wide open.
Yeah.
You are not going to fill the bathtub of profits with a wide open drain. So this is what I mean by career path. But that again goes to, so I like to always talk about recruiting. You walk past the restaurant, you want to go out to eat with your friends, and you stop at the restaurant and you're outside the window, and what does the thing in the window said? Looking for experienced cook, looking for experienced waiters, do you really want to eat there? Because I'm thinking not. But we put on our trucks, help wanted, help wanted, help wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, I know your truck's in it. You can put in, now there is a way to temper that. You can always put it, always looking for great people, always hiring great people. That said, there are more things. One of the great ways to recruit in my company was because we had so many A and B players we developed and got rid of the C and D players. They know who the other A and B players are, and I paid them to help me recruit. Okay. Because for two reasons. They weren't going to bring anybody bad that tarnished them, number one.
Yeah.
And number two is if they wanted to move up, they can't move up if there aren't other people coming in. So they were not worried about new people arriving. They were not the threat. They were actually what was going to allow them to move their career along. Mm. So they were happy people. So don't overlook that as a resource. And today, of course, in terms of ads, you have to be using online. It's non-negotiable.
Okay.
That you have a good, and what's great about that is you have more space. So I don't know what the job boards monster, is America is pretty good. We have Craigslist, which is pretty good, which is not really designed for a job board. The better you are at social media, the better this whole recruiting approach will go.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So, I suppose at the end of the day, that recruiting process or the success in a recruiting process really comes down to how well you can, I suppose, help those people that could be applying for the job, help them realize that it's about helping them get to where they want to go, not so much about what you want to achieve.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Cool.
Yes.
And
also, here's the thing that I didn't have years ago when I was recruiting. So they would show up and I didn't know what to do with them. Just because, like I said, at the mirror test, they breathe in the mirror, let's put them to work and whatever. Yeah. And most of us don't want to recruit. Everybody who's listened here will relate to this is when they finally show up and Matt, you ask them a question like this. So Matt, have you ever, replaced a toilet or a faucet, or what's the only answer we ever get?
Of course.
Oh yeah. done tons of it.
Yeah.
But none of us, and so you have to change the equation. So don't let that be a barrier, because what I finally learned to do when I was proactively always marketing in the form of recruiting and always bringing people in to see, who would fit in this model. All that I'm saying is if you have the skills and you have a career to offer, you are widening the field that you get to choose from.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that's coming across as the thing. So that's really what you're selling. So what is it that you are selling? And as all marketing is designed, what is differentiating me going to work at Matt Jones' company versus the Al Levy company?
Yeah.
You, whoever the listener is right now, has to think, what are you uniquely offering that puts you above your competition? So are you playing the salary game? Are there benefits to you? Are you a company where you don't burn out your employees, where you work them 24 hours a day and they're on call every night, week after week? There's all of these things. And the hardest thing is to go and be them and see it through their eyes and see what it is that you are offering, that you become the employer of choice. That is your goal.
Beautiful. Okay. Now, I suppose we're getting towards the end of this episode. I figure we may as well talk. Well, do you want to talk about hiring in this episode, or do you want to talk about hiring in the following, where we're talking about onboarding and training?
I think, for me, it's recruiting leads to hiring and hiring leads to orienting. So a little bit of a tease here. So when they show up, be ready to know what you need to do. So the hiring process is what we finally learned to do is not take them at their word. Right. So a bookkeeper sits down, or accounts receivable, accounts payable person, and the same thing goes, Matt, do you know QuickBooks? What's the only answer you'll ever get?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
So have something set up and go, that's great, Matt, because we have a few examples of how to put an invoice in or whatever it is, and get them to sit at a keyboard and find out what they really do and don't know.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing goes for when we hired techs. Is we had a training center, and we would set up a couple of problems and send them out there with a toolbox with us and find out what they did and didn't know, because it leads to, how do I pay these people? I don't know what they really know. So at my company, I developed what I call a salary level or ladder. So I explained during the recruiting hiring process to you, here's where you are today. Here's where you can rise tomorrow. Here's what I'm going to do to help you get there. And as you go, you don't have to come back to me and ask for a raise. I'm not your dad giving you an allowance. You will be giving yourself a raise based on this.
Yeah.
And that is what totally turned on the ear, the way that I had approached the marketing before of recruiting, leading into hiring. And then I did become the employer of choice. And I have taught the companies through the years the same process. And they too are it. So they're looking for experienced help who wants to come to a better company and get a future. They're looking for recommendations and referrals from their own staff. And they're looking if they have the skills to be able to take young, willing people and fill the positions, instead of always trying to rewire people, which is very difficult and a very small pie to work over. That dish will get empty in a hurry.
Yeah, cool. And so that ladder, that salary ladder, does that tie into the organizational chart in some way?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Excellent point. Yes.
Okay.
The organizational chart. So the guys that I work with, I explain to them that you do not hide the org chart from them. You show them that the day they arrive. Here's where you're coming today. Here's where you can go tomorrow. Here are people that I'll let you talk at the company with who will tell you that where they started and where they're going. Take a walk with me. I'm going to show you some things about what makes this company special and why you're going to want to be here. And I actually turn it into a competition.
Right.
I do.
Well, why don't we come back with the next episode? We'll leave it as a bit of a cliffhanger, and we'll talk about the competition.
Like it.
All right, listeners. Well, that was the first episode of the 3-part series we've named The Ultimate Blueprint to Finding, Training, and Retaining A-Level Staff with Mr. Al Levy from Appleseed Business out of the US. That episode was Recruiting Your A-Team, and the following episode, which will lead into it, is called Onboarding and Training Your A-Team. Okay, that's a wrap. Okay, well, that concludes the conversation that I had with Alan around sales. I hope you guys got something out of that. Alan is a wealth of knowledge, and anyone that runs a business that turns over $18 million a year certainly knows what they're talking about. So I hope that you took a lot of that on board. If you want to get hold of the show notes for that page, you can head across to the siteshed.com/podcasts and you can search for that episode. I strongly recommend you do that because there's going to be some downloadable information on that page where you can get hold of that for the grand price of $0. So go and do that, get hold of the information, and then get yourself a ticket to that upcoming event with the Service Success Academy. It's at the end of November. It's going to be a cracker. It's in Sydney. So take a bit of time out on yourselves and, invest in yourselves for a day. That's all from me. Ciao. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.